Wait a second. Is this not going? Oh, it is. The Comic Binge presents a subseries dedicated to one of the most divisive and imaginative mainstream comic book runs ever created with an iconic character. This is Knights Never Die, Grant Morrison's Batman, issue by issue. Tonight we're proceeding with Act 1, Knight versus Glove. Hello there. I'm Chris Clow, one of the co-hosts of the Comic Binge, and it's been a long time since we've been able to do Knights Never Die for you, but I think we're pretty jazzed to talk about this issue. Let me make sure to round this out. We return with it's pretty momentous. This is a pretty momentous issue in the entirety of the Grant Morrison Batman saga, and it's kind of taken on something of a legendary status, I think is pretty safe to say, in the 18 years that have elapsed, or nearly 18 years that have elapsed since the issue came out. And it's kind of an important milestone despite its ambiguous canonicity, let's say. But we can talk about some of the derivations from this issue as we go forward. But tonight I'm joined once more by my partner in crime fighting from the Flash Up to Speed with Wally West, as well as the 007 files, reviewer extraordinaire at Batman on Film. I could go on, but I won't, because it's like listing Captain Kirk's commendations. You got to cut it off at some point. Mr. Javi Trujillo. Javi, how are you doing, my friend?
My thumbs hurt from all the dodging of man-bats today in Gotham Knights.
Yeah.
I'm on the final case.
Okay.
So
getting down to it. So you're enjoying it quite a bit then, it sounds like.
Yeah. It like I told you off mic, there was a bit of a curve. Just because you want to play it like an Arkham game. And lately I've fallen into the trap where I want to play it like Spider-Man. I want to web someone and yank them towards me. And that button doesn't do that action. But I'm enjoying the story elements of it a lot, and flipping out the character. I'm primarily playing as Tim, but I am tricking it up every now and then to give everyone some equal playtime, especially because there are certain story beats that happen when you switch between characters and emails and whatnot. But primarily, maining as Tim Drake, and I think it's called like Night Watch. It's basically his classic costume.
It was Jim Lee designed those derivations of the classic costumes for everybody.
Javi, you have a PlayStation 5, right?
Yeah.
Well, dude, why don't we all do? I didn't know we were playing it now. We should all go on there.
Yeah, sure, man. Also too, founding Binge founding father Paul Herman here. Hello, Paul.
Hello.
Look, man, you don't have to twist my arm very hard to get you to play a video game. I just didn't think that was in the cards, frankly.
Well, no. Now that Javi's on there, I know you already played it probably 5 million times. I'm like, well, I'm wanting to play the game for a while. So, I mean,
have you not played it at all?
I haven't played it at all. He got it for me for Christmas a couple years ago. I've been meaning to play it. It's like everything, but
we watched the opening cinematic together.
Yeah. It's been awesome. A minute. It's been a minute. But I love to play like Red Hood, and it'd be fun. So
yeah, I mean we would all name different people, I think. So
yeah, I mean So let's look into that. Let's look into that. So
yeah, sounds good. Well,
yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, we'd have a
Chris
great
has
time.
already helped me fight like a Brainiac possessed Superman in Suicide Squad. So
Yeah, yeah. And I'm just about to roll up on the final Brainiac of the entire game. So with good old Slade Wilson to see how they're gonna bring it home
nice.
with
See, I
a
haven't even
severely reduced budget.
I haven't even gotten back to that yet because I've just been focusing on Gotham Knights because it's been sitting on my hard drive since I got the PS5 like 2 years ago now. So
Sure, man. No, I've been playing. Weirdly enough, I never beat. Or no, I did beat the story, but I never completed Lego Batman 3, and it's a game that I can pick up and play with my daughter, and we're having a good time with that. So
nice.
yeah, got
There's so
my
many
toe.
things to unlock on that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, today we are going to be diving into, like I said, a pretty momentous moment in this run overall. You can see the primary cover behind us here in the background. We're going to be diving into Batman Volume 1, number 666. It was released on July 25th in 2007 with a cover date of July, which is kind of unusual, but the book has a March of 2007 item code via Diamond Comics distributors. So the issue was delayed by a couple of months. And I remember getting notice of the delay and being pretty bummed out about it, but I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
This one, of course, was written by Grant Morrison, features cover and interior artist Andy Kubert on pencils, alongside the returning duo of Jesse Delperdang on inks and Guy Major on colors. And unfortunately for all of us, most especially Paul, I'm sure, this issue marks the final interior pencils on a regular issue by Andy Kubert during this run. He does show up in a limited capacity later on, a very limited capacity, but we do see Andy Kubert pencils again on a Grant Morrison Batman issue. But unfortunately, this is the last hurrah for Mr. Kubert's regular contributions as the primary penciler, collaborating with Morrison going forward. We got a little bit of a fill-in is a wrong word, but the issues ahead, there's a couple of different artists who step up, and then the next ongoing artist is going to be Tony Daniels starting at issue 670. So we've got 1 3-issue arc before Tony Daniel has a big chunk of things through the end of Batman R.I.P. And then we'll progress into a whole other section of the run while we get into Final Crisis. So we're plugging along, but there is a lot of stuff here. I'd like to begin because I know, unlike a lot of the other issues that this run contains, Paul has actually read this one before. So Paul, I actually want to throw it to you first before we invoke the other parts of the run that we've read so far together. Take me back to your first time reading this issue, and why did it make such an impression on you?
Okay, so for the record, Chris, I could see why you think I had read this before. I haven't read this before, actually. Um, what I liked was I liked the design of. I know. Hold on, I liked the design of the Damian Wayne Batman costume a lot. Um, and so I was really into that. I was really into that. So I haven't actually read this issue. I just all I knew. I will tell you though, when it came out, I knew it was a big deal, and I kept seeing things of it I think this is a truly inspired design by Kubert. This is chef's kiss. I love this design. And I think it was, I remember I got really into HeroClix, and I went and bought the hero click of this version of Batman. It was such a rad. It has a really cool it's basically that pose that the hero click is emulating. If I was smart, I would have grabbed it. I have no idea where it is now. I still have it, but it's really really cool. In fact, I'm gonna go find it and just post it. I mean, the hero, some of the later hero clicks are really cool looking and whatever. But any rate, I think I've read Kubert's Batman Damian Wayne's miniseries. But I think this is this version of Batman's in there, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. It's been a minute. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I haven't read the comic, but it's mainly because I didn't know where to go, and I think what I have read was, is it issue 800, whatever the big milestone issue that he comes back for, Andy Kubert does with Grant Morrison.
700. Yeah.
Is 700? Yeah. I read he does a backup with that, correct? For this version of the character.
A brief one, yes.
Yeah, and I like that.
He does a mini series that he wrote as well.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying.
That deals with some of these characters. Yeah.
Yeah. So I read some of that. Yeah, word. I'm with you on that one. And yeah, so I know this version of the character, which I'm really into, and I had no idea, or I knew he was introduced in this run sometime. So this is actually the first time I've actually read the comic book myself, but it's not my first run in with this version of the character, which I really enjoyed. So, yeah, like that's just kind of my my foray into this issue.
All right, Javi, take me back to the first time you read this. I know it's kind of hard to separate it from, well, maybe it's not so hard to kind of separate it from everything that we've read so far, because it is effectively kind of a one-off. But what were your initial impressions upon reading it for the first time?
Basically that it was just out there. And I'm trying to remember what, I didn't get a chance to look it up. What came first, Superman or Batman hitting this milestone number of an issue? But Busiek did something similar with like a demon themed issue for Superman when they hit this number as well. And yeah, I don't really remember that story, unfortunately, even though it's got Simonson art. But
one thing I'll briefly mention about Superman 666, it had an October of 07 cover date, so I believe it came out in August. So I think it came out after
Batman. The month after then. Okay.
But there is a moment here where the demonically possessed Superman, for all intents and purposes, there's a little more to it than that, is so frustrated and fed up with having to deal with Lex Luthor that he hawks a loogie through his brain. And that image is just like forever embedded in my mind. I just remember being so shocked by it. But anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Please.
Just, it's Grant Morrison doing Morrison things and introducing all these villains that at the time we had no idea how we were going to see them again in the months and years to come, and what kind of role they were going to play in like future series like Batman and Robin. Because at this moment, like, we have no idea about Professor Pig at all. And this is our first glimpse of him. And it was just a really interesting issue. And I really appreciated how we opened up with basically Damian's origin as Batman, and how McFarlane, with the myriad of Batman figures that he's made,
I'm with you,
and Jokerized variants and Frozen variants.
Yep.
I mean, there's a Frozen George Clooney Batman figure coming, and how the hell we don't have this Damian Wayne in a trench coat figure yet is beyond me, especially when we have Thomas Wayne from Flashpoint masked and unmasked.
Word.
Just I loved opening up with this origin, you know who he is and how he came to be. That's something we see reflected in Batman Year One by one of the intro pages, and it's something that Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb took a stab at when they did Hush. But all that really goes back to Detective 33, opened up with Batman, who he is and how he came to be. And we see the murder of the Waynes and Bruce making the solemn vow. We get the lab, him working in the lab, and then that final shot of him in the wings that's so iconic. And I love how Lee pays his tribute. He throws in Zorro. And again, he does presumably a Kane tribute at the end with the last panel, we see Bruce being a scientist, and Kubert does the same thing. We've got Damian working on something. He doesn't copy the pose exactly, but I mean, I was in just based on that. And not to get too ahead of ourselves, but there's other little character elements that they throw in to this series that I really appreciated seeing, especially Damian's relationship with Alfred, which I was not expecting. But we'll get to that in just a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's
Can
gonna
I-
be a fun.
May I just kind of throw my 2 cents in of this issue kind of off the bat, kind of piggybacking off of what you guys are talking about, this whole intro, if I may, Chris, if that's okay. One of the, do you want me to tell you what my overall feelings are of this comic before I kind of dive into this next part, or what do you want me to do? I just want to make sure.
Whatever's in your head, man.
Okay. First of all, as someone who really likes this character and who really likes, or not these characters, but this version of Batman, I would say, and the look, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't really know what to expect. And just going into this kind of off kilter, different universe, was a little bit like weird. And I won't lie that I enjoyed the issue. Was not bad. I did not feel cheated or like, wasn't like I was reading prose again in a comic book, you know? It wasn't like that.
You gotta let that go, man.
I'll never let it go.
You
There's
can't
one
let
thing-
anything
Javi, you should
go.
know.
You
No,
can't let-
Yeah, Javi, you should know this about me now. I never let anything go. I will ride things to the ground until it is bloodied and just, and for better or for worse, that's just who I am, as Paul Herman. Anyway, I was, as I'm reading the issue, I liked it. It just felt very out of place, and I know it serves a purpose, I'm assuming, at some point. And this is where I would say the Lynchiism, David Lynch, R.I.P., the brilliant artist, and I say artist because that's what he was. This is where I feel like Grant Morrison really takes a lot of influence from David Lynch in this. If you watch Twin Peaks: The Return, which I don't know if you guys have ever watched Twin Peaks or if you have you seen The Return? Am I striking anything with you guys on this one?
No,
Chris,
sorry, bud.
we're gonna have to do a Twin Peaks watch together. Anyway, what Lynch likes to do, especially in The Return, is he likes to go forward and backwards in time, and for no reason. Like, for no reason. He just does it. Like, he'll just kind of go all over the place. And this definitely feels like that, where it's more so, it's foreshadowing, obviously, but it's mostly also setting up just like what his intentions are as more of a character for Damian, not for Batman, but the significance of Damian. And that, I thought, because obviously I know what Damian's, what his significance is in the context of the overall, or I almost said MCU. Sorry, been on a Fantastic Four kick lately. The benefit of the DC Comics universe, but I feel like this was more so than anything to set up Damian as he's kind of here to stay, and not in a way of like, this is what's going to happen, but by doing this specific book and having it be completely random, an outlier again, from my understanding of what it is right now, because I don't know what I'm walking into after this or in the future besides Batman and Robin, which I've read majority of. But he's saying Damian is significant. He is important, but again, because it's such a random issue and people are going to expect him to be like, oh my God, he's going to be Batman. What do we do? Like, for someone like me who doesn't like Damian or doesn't like Damian that much, I'd be up in arms about it. But it's kind of brilliant from an artistic, creative standpoint, because he does this really kind of fun, like one and done issue that doesn't really mean anything. right? From a character standpoint, I'm only thinking from a character standpoint. Obviously, yeah, I don't know, maybe there's not, but from the standpoint that he's giving Damian a lot of weight without really giving a lot of expectations, in my opinion, because of this one random issue. And again, I'm only assuming this issue in this version of Batman doesn't really come into play really much, from my understanding.
Well, let's
Do you have the absolute, Paul?
I do not.
Okay. Because there is a sequel in Batman Incorporated, and that gets collected. It was really interesting because I was going to read that version before for the show, and I used my bookmark, the little tassel that it comes with, and the next issue was the black glove. I'm like, that's not right. So I had to flip through, and at the end of the book, they reprint this issue with the Batman Incorporated sequel, which also like plays into the finale of Batman Incorporated. So you see him again, and it's pretty important, I think.
Yeah, it is. Like I understand where you're coming from, and it does look like a bit of an outlier. And I think this is where the sort of more holistic perspective of the entire run really comes into play, because it's certainly making it, I don't think you're wrong at all about the idea that it's making a statement about what Damian's importance is to not certainly to this narrative, but also to the larger mythos at this moment in time. But it really is, at least for my money, a depiction of the line that Damian walks, and that we will see him walk more directly in the quote unquote modern era that will come. But let's before we jump into things, my initial first impression of this issue was I was disturbed by this, frankly. I was absolutely unprepared for, let's say, the weight that comes from such stark and hellacious imagery. And it's not just imagery in the sense of something that you see, it's imagery in the sense of what it is pulling from and the statement that it's trying to make about the state of this world. And, there's like a forward extrapolation that Morrison invokes in this issue about issues of the time that reach apocalyptic conclusions. And honestly, there were a few things in there that maybe hit a little close to home about some of the things that we're dealing with right now. Particularly when it comes to, what was it? Didn't someplace in the world hit like 120 degrees?
123.
123. Yeah, that yeah. But
I can't even imagine that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you live in Texas, so that's saying something. But
yeah.
In any event, I mean, well, so the original solicitation that was distributed by DC in March of 2007 says, it reads as follows: Meet Damian Wayne, the Batman of tomorrow, in this special issue set 15 years from now in a nightmarish future Gotham. In a world torn apart by terrorism, plagues, rogue weather, and bizarre supercrime, only 24 hours are left before the climactic battle of Armageddon, and only one man who might be able to stop it. But will he? The son of the Bat meets the Prince of Darkness, and the stage is set for the ultimate battle between evil and moral ambiguity. Can Damian make peace with his heritage to save the world? Find out in Batman number 666. And at this point, the issue had a different title. Numbers of the Beast is what the solicitation makes reference to. So, in terms of the place that this issue occupies in the wider run, this is a story that has very firm thematic connections to the broader run. It presents some key information about the kind of person that Morrison envisions Damian to be, and it has these apocalyptic overtones stemming, of course, from the number of the issue and its mythological connections. But specifically when it comes to Damian, it is a more overt representation of the line he will walk between his lineage, his familial lineage on his father's side, and his upbringing. Really the brutalistic, you could argue maybe sadistic kind of upbringing that he endured at the hands of his mother in the League of Assassins. I almost said League of Shadows. Wrong conception. But that's one of the things that I think makes this issue such a compelling read. In the moment, if you're kind of trying to observe the tenuous canonicity that it has to the wider DC universe, it does feel very much like an outlier. But in isolation, particularly as we're reading this run issue by issue and we're talking about it, the importance of this story is really to illustrate what Damian could be and would be without the steady hand of his father. And it becomes more explicit, I guess. I mean, at this point, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to address, and I think we've done it before, that there will be a point in this run where Bruce Wayne is taken off the board. So, having this issue in your mind and realizing that we are going to endure a Gotham City without Bruce Wayne's watchful eye, it might lead you to think that maybe this is a future with inevitability to it. Morrison naturally takes things in a bit of a different direction, but one of the things that I really loved about this issue is that Damian directly addresses the idea of knowing in his own mind that he is not equipped, let's say, not skillful enough to match the example of Batman set by his father. And he also mentions Dick Grayson's name and the way that he needs to evolve beyond that. But the thing that really brings it home, and it's really early in the issue, where the poem by William Butler Yeats, written in 1919, The Second Coming, is directly referenced by characters in dialogue. In this case, Batman, Damian Batman, and the future Commissioner Barbara Gordon. And The Second Coming, it's a pretty fascinating, it's one of the most famous poems in the English language, but I'll just read the first stanza where it says, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. And it also, later on, it makes reference to a beast born in Bethlehem. It ends, what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. And that beast here is Damian. He is a chaotic force. He is someone who is not necessarily tethered to the virtues of the angels, in this case his father. He is unequipped to have the resolve that Bruce Wayne has had when it comes to inflicting death, inflicting a harsher degree of justice. Gotham has effectively morphed into something darker and more sadistic, really. And finding out some of the particulars about the ways in which Damian is actually trying to manage things to fulfill a promise, conceivably a dying promise to his father to keep the city safe. What does that cost? And that's really where, and I'd be interested, considering your history, Paul, with the religious overtones. Like, this is really the first issue in the run, and maybe the only issue in the run, really, to have overtly religious overtones to it. And the nature of what the bargain is that Damian seems to have engaged in when he was a kid. He said, I think he was 14 by the time we get to the end of the issue. And there's just so much to bite into here that I really appreciate. And I think it's designed to give you an impression about the depth and the the machinations that Damian is going to have to sink into if he wants to be anything resembling a Batman in the example of his father. And he effectively reasons by this point, I can't be my father, so I'm going to be me, and I'm going to cheat, and I'm still going to win.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of, um, I don't know, the struggle between who he wants to be and who he really is is eminent here. And I think you're seeing, I think what's key is the fact that this this version of Damien loses his father again, or loses his father at a very young age still. It's not like he grows up with him and he's able to like learn from him over time, like we're kind of getting now in the comic books and the storyline. Now, Damien loses him pretty quick after becoming Robin and doesn't get him back. And so, to your point, what you're saying here is that this issue serves as kind of like you know a tale of someone losing an important figure and what that really how that trajectory can put that person on a different scale, even when they're trying to honor that person, right? And I think that's what's really fascinating. If you go from a broader standpoint of, we all have people we care about and we lose, right? But how important are they to really lead you down the right path and, to really save you essentially, right? And that's what we're kind of seeing here. We're seeing Damian, he thinks he's doing the right thing, but without Batman's guidance from, a substantial time frame, there is a weakness here. Now we don't know if this is, incorporating Batman and Robin, where I think one of the best aspects of Damian was actually Dick Grayson, to be quite honest. I think Dick Grayson and Damian's relationship was fantastic, and I think Grant Morrison did a great. And I can't wait to reread those comics when we get there. But I think if I'm knowing what happens in Batman and Robin, and with this and everything, it does feel that this is maybe not incorporating, in my opinion, their relationship, because it feels like Damian really feels and learns a lot through Dick, more so than Bruce at this point. Again, to this point, so it feels like this issue definitely feels to me. You have someone who's very torn and doesn't know that can't balance out, or tries to, better yet, tries to balance himself of his true self to what he knows is what he wants to do. And I feel like that's where this issue really flourishes the most, as you're seeing through all of the fun Batmanisms we're getting a Batman who truly is kind of lost in a way and doesn't really know it. And I think that to me is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, I mean it's hinting at really the challenge that Damian kind of forces upon himself, and again the associated cost, particularly when you have a machination of evil that is so explicitly manifested, right? Javi, what did you make of the religious overtones, and what do you think it says about Damian as a character, especially considering all of the asterisks that you have to put here? This is a possible future, arguably. I mean, maybe within the context of this run, it's supposed to be the future, but given our understanding of the way comics continuity works, possible future, but hinting at the kind of person he will be, but also the things that he's going to have to confront and what he's willing to sacrifice to do it. And I think you're muted.
It's one of those clues to like the bigger villain of this story. Because if you think back to like the first issue, the Joker gets shot and thrown in the trash. Like, if you thought that was Batman's greatest villain, we've got news for you. we're throwing him away. And this starts to reinforce the idea of Batman fighting the devil. And it gets a little muddy because I mean, we all know that what Morrison wanted for Damian initially, and then how that changed. And then he had to delay what he wanted for a while. But then eventually we're going to get, corporate decisions made and that stuff is going to go away. But by having this, special issue, like we're seeing the themes of what Bruce is going to have to overcome, because we already see his son, who is, genetically engineered to replace him, to be better than him, fail at the job. So in light of that, like, how is Batman going to overcome this obstacle in the present day, especially because we know that he's going to die? And it's been almost 20 years, like you said, so my memory's a little muddled on it. Because it does get talked about for months about Batman RIP. Like there was quite a build up to that. And this was back when DC was doing like these great 2-page like teasers of what was going to come for the year. They did one for like Countdown. They did several for Countdown and for like 52, and Batman had one as well. And it showed like these different Batman that were on the cover. And it was basically hinting at Battle for the Cowl. But if we go back a couple issues and we saw Batman have the nightmare about the 3 Batman who visited him in his dream, we got not a Thomas Wayne eared Batman, but we did see someone like the one on the screen right now, who doesn't, you have to remind me, Chris, like he doesn't really, whoever this is, doesn't really come back into play necessarily in that form. We see Jason adopt a mask like this for Battle of the Cowl, and DC Direct even made a figure of it. And he has guns, of course, because, that's how you show it's an evil Batman, by having pistols. But you can't, just by reading this particular issue, you don't necessarily get the impression that this is Dr. Hurt or who it really is. But I'm just noticing too, like his faceplate, how it's an upside down cross. So the imagery is definitely all over this. And of course, Damian ultimately wins by, I mean, you guys called it cheating, but I mean, it's a theme that's echoed throughout this run, that victory's in the preparation. And the fact that Damian realizes he could never be as good as his dad, so he made the entire city a weapon and has all these little traps planted through every single building in Gotham, is just like, that's Batman perfection right there. Like, he's thought that far ahead. People criticize the Bat God aspects of Morrison's Batman run. But I just think it's cool that he's playing chess, and he's that far ahead of his opponent that he's thought years in advance. So it didn't really. No, go ahead.
No, please continue, and I'll finish up after you.
No, go for it.
Well,
after you, sir.
One of the things, thank you. One of the things that and maybe I'm just a big dum-dum, and I'm just like, I'm taking the bait, but this Batman, I thought it was Tim. Like,
you
the
thought
way
it was
they're
Tim?
talking to each other.
The one in the mask?
Yeah, him.
This guy?
Yeah, I thought it was Tim Drake. And,
What?
I mean, I thought it was obvious.
What led you to believe that?
Because they have a history, and that there's like because also Morrison set up their relationship immediately,
right?
And the fact that like you had the goody two shoes character of Tim Drake, who's kind of like teacher's pet, you could say, which I love. I'm a huge Tim Drake guy, and this is not like a knock on Tim. I love Tim, but Tim is not the warrior, right? And it's not the quote unquote birthright. So it's almost when I was again, how I interpret everything was that this is like Tim kind of going off, and there's I know, is it Tinian's uh run that kind of goes into like a crazy Tim Drake, I think it is. But at any rate,
Yeah.
I do get, which by the way, I love Tinian's run, by the way. I think it's a run as chef's kiss.
His Batman or his detective?
Detective. I
Okay.
love Detective. I have never read his Batman. I've heard mixed things about his Batman, but I
So
digress.
just to chime in real fast, I don't
Please.
know if this is necessarily accurate or not, but if you go on the DC database, the Bat Devil, his name is given as Michael Washington Lane. And Michael Lane is one of the three ghosts of Batman who
He was the
ultimately
one that
ends
shot
up.
Joker, right?
Was he
Was
the
Lane
one
the
that
one who
shot?
shot Joker?
He might have been, but I mean, he definitely becomes
Something else.
one of the next incarnations of Azrael later,
Yeah.
right?
Ah,
So, but Morrison is taking it in clearly a different direction. This is more of a literal manifestation of the son of the devil, and one of the things that allows Damian to ultimately resist and overcome him is this apparent protection that Damian has because of a deal that he struck with Bat Devil's dad, who, I mean, is implied to be the ultimate personification of evil, the fallen angel himself. I kind of would have liked it. It's not in the cards, but if DC Lucifer made an appearance here. But no, this is one of the things that I do find compelling about it, because at the end of the day, without Bruce around and apparently without Dick Grayson around, I think it's alluded to that Dick Grayson is dead. And the only reason I called it cheating was because that's what Damian called it in the issue.
That's
Um,
fair.
but like, I don't necessarily think it's cheating, especially if you have to try to overcome the son of the devil. My God. But um, he reasoned that the choice he needed to make to fulfill the dying wish of his father necessitated the payment of his soul. And he's almost daring the Bat Devil, or whomever you want to call him, to tell his dad, hey, come and get it. I'm ready
The
for
dragon.
you. The dragon, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And the fact that you have such a harsh Batman, and this issue is violent, like especially in
yeah.
comparison to the recent. I think that's one of the reasons why it initially shocked me the first time that I read it, because I opened the first page and I'm like, oh, cool, it's going to be like a quasi look at an alternate future, or whatever it might be. And not only is it thematically heavy, but the level of violence, like, we knew that it was Damian going into the issue. It was in the solicit, of course, but the darkness in the kid that we saw in Batman and Son uh, is taken to its natural extreme without the guiding hand of his father, and conceivably without really any input from the other side of his family either. He appears to have rejected that, but he hasn't rejected a lot of the methods. And because of that, he has reasoned that, well, one of the ways I'm going to cheat is I'm going to make a deal with the devil. I'm going to keep Gotham safe, and I'm going to be a beast to everybody, and I'm going to be the best friend to the police that they've ever seen, as he effectively tells the commissioner at the end. But that's the cost of withholding the apocalypse, of canceling the apocalypse,
well,
is Damian's soul.
and that's the thing I think that's really interesting about this, right? Is the fact that Grant Morrison is telling us how important. And this is like, no, I'm not bringing anything new to the table here, but I think it's fascinating what makes our heroes so great. And I hate to. I'm not trying to compare these runs at all, Javi, so bear with me. but it feels a little bit not inspired, but it's similar to like kind of like what Dan Slott was trying to do with Superior Spider-Man, right? This is a lot more artistic and a lot more, I think, interesting and on its surface, but it's kind of the same idea, right? Like what all of Spider-Man, and what if Spider-Man was actually not have Peter Parker's personality, is what obviously Dan Slott was trying to do. Not necessarily Doctor Octopus, but he was as a means to an end to tell that kind of story, right? Like what
Mhm.
if anyone could be Spider-Man, what and be that same kind of Peter Parker, but not Peter Parker, what would that look like? And we got a glimpse of that. And obviously that's it. This is apples and oranges, but that idea of like how important our heroes' backstories and their fundamentals are to their characters is, I think, always an interesting story, no matter which way you cut it, to be honest. And I think obviously already this is way more fascinating because just of the fact that this is a random issue of like a what could be, and obviously showing you how important Batman's conscience and mercy is. And I think that to me is what's fascinating about, I think, this specifically, because obviously in like Superior Spider-Man, it's more of a narrative that you're seeing unfold before you, right? And again, I don't think it's bad either, but going back to my whole Lynch thing in Twin Peaks, this is such a random thing, and this is exactly what Lynch would do. He'd put something like this in here to establish something out of nowhere, kind of, because we don't know Batman's going away. We don't know what Damian's future is at all. But the fact that he puts this in and shows you kind of like a cautionary tale, if you will, for Damian but we don't know what the reason of the story exists in the first place. We don't know if this is a dream Damian gets yet. I don't know, or what this represents necessarily at this point. And that's what I think is so fascinating, is that as a reader, we haven't seen Damian show up yet. Again,
Well,
after he's
two things. One, I think that it would be prudent to ask whether or not Damien actually has like a death wish, because it seems like he has such a fatalistic existence, and the only thing that is really keeping him going is this sense of obligation. Clearly his life means nothing to him. His soul means nothing to him. He's in pursuit of the ultimate mission of Batman, despite the fact that the originator of the Batman mantle is long gone. So does he actually care about himself, or does he actually just kind of consider himself a vessel through which to try and accomplish the goals of his father, to try and make amends for whatever happened? And it's left a little bit ambiguous. I mean, we have the essential details, of course, but also too, and this isn't an idea that I had, this is something I came upon years later, but it was suggested to me, and I can't remember who suggested it to me, that Damian is Mordred and that Batman is Arthur. And because Mordred destined to kill his father and to sink into a pit or area of despair. And really that is his existence. His existence is defined kind of like the existence that is defining the absolute universe, really, just like the conflict is the thing that keeps him going. And that's something that I think is really interesting, and particularly, if there is kind of this Arthurian legend that is being applied to the Batman mythology, you don't really have that without creating a firmer connection on the basis of the relationship between Arthur and Mordred. And seems like Damian is kind of Mordred-y in terms of the role he's playing here. And as we get further into the run and the true face of evil starts to reveal itself, the religious overtones become certainly more potent, but also too is just like this future is something for Damian to try to avoid, in a sense. Even if he doesn't have a particularly clear picture of what's going to happen, he starts to get the sense, as we will discover, that his very existence could bring ruin to everybody that he has developed love and affection for. And we see that explored more sufficiently much later on. But the seeds are laid here. That's why this is such a pivotal issue, is because it gives us a look, a forward extrapolation, but still it gives us a look at the complexity that Damian is going to have to wrestle with and how his choices ultimately impact the legacy of Batman and the future of Gotham, even if things ultimately take a bit of a different turn by the time things move into a little bit of a different direction for the run. So just wanted to throw that out there. Let's start winding this down. And are there any particular like final thoughts that you guys want to share about this issue that we didn't touch on? We didn't really touch on Barbara Gordon, but she has kind of a supporting role at best. Javi, I know you had mentioned you wanted to touch on the relationship with Alfred.
Oh yeah, well, before I get to that, I never really considered Paul's theory about this alternate Batman being Tim. And just glancing at it again right now, like I didn't get that impression, but I see where you're coming from. And I think that's an interesting angle on their relationship, because it's even still something to this day. I think it was like the penultimate issue of Batman, the Brave and the Bold that just ended like 2 months ago. There's a story of Tim and Damian both going out as Robin, and Killer Moth confuses which Robin he has a vendetta with, because he only thought there was one. And so he kidnaps a whole bunch of kids and dresses them up as Robin as bait. And just the fact that like he's Killer Moth, so he's like a Z-list villain, but that there's this, you don't know how many Robins there really are, but it's their one-upmanship with each other, their competition gets them into hot water in the story. So I can see why you would come to that conclusion. It was just not something I'd ever really considered before, and I think that's an interesting take on it, because it is pretty unclear, but I just didn't pick up on any context clues.
Well, and just to kind of, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's
just really quick to kind of follow up on that is the reason why is because because of the fact of there is a Batman, there's two Batmen, right? And we've already, and again, Grant Morrison loves his layers, because there's two, because he thought Robin was like we already had Robin versus, Robin, so to speak. And we had, one beat the other, and it was like, but everyone mostly, I'm assuming, would root for Tim at that point, not Damian. And this is reversed, and you're seeing like a more twisted Batman, even compared to Damian. And Damian's still like not close to what Bruce was. The other Batman's like pure evil, right? And the fact they have this established relationship, so I'm putting the layers of, I'm projecting that into there, and just what I picked up on, there is already an adversarial relationship between them. Not, and it felt more the way it was written, the I interpreted it. It already felt more than what they were. Felt more than just like, I'm your arch nemesis kind of thing. That there was a history. And the fact that this Batman's like everything, it's even more extreme than Damian, makes sense in this weird kind of timeline of this Batman is an evil Batman, and that's something that we would never think Tim would be, and that's what he is. And because this is something we never thought we'd see, a Damian, a biological, Damian being Batman. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of all for me works in that way. And this, again, some of the dialogue, the way it was written, I picked up on that. So I'm sorry, I wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, you're good. I just love that he gets home and greets Alfred, and Alfred Pennyworth has passed away, but he still keeps his memory alive by having a cat named Alfred. And it's really interesting to me because, and we see the cat again and again, just that, he's this kid who grew up being trained to be an assassin, and he seems to like collect pets as the character progresses. In Morrison's run, we get Bat Cow, and we get a new Bat Hound, and he even gets down the road a huge, I don't even know what Goliath is, but he gets like this bat beast of a friend, and it shows that there's more layers to Damian here, and that he can care for something, but he's so damaged by his upbringing that he can only relate to like pets. And in light of like Tom King's run, and the guilt that Damian carries from a major event in that, like it's fitting to see like in this alternate future that he would keep Alfred's memory alive. Because as we get into like the Batman and Robin of it all, I think Alfred really helps cement that Dick and Damian relationship, and despite the way he treated Alfred when he first came to Wayne Manor, like he really does become that grandfather that like everybody would want for him. And we see that in this possible future with Alfred being the name of his cat.
Definitely.
But just like finally, like, and there are images that we didn't show, because they do get even more graphic than the ones we saw. Even like the one of the demise of this other Batman, like it's shadowed out, so it's not that graphic, but there's just a little bit of what happens to him at the end. And like that's really nasty. But the whole final battle and how he promised his father he wouldn't kill, and looks like I let him down again. And just Morrison has some like really, really great lines. Like, I'm surprised the son of Satan doesn't remember what they did to the son of God. Like he just dialogue is just so on point, for Damian, and it threw me off when it first came out, I think a little bit. And now that I've read it so much, like it's not as shocking as these things tend to be when we get acclimated to them. But especially looking back in hindsight, like I love this issue so much more than I did in, what was it, July of 2007?
Indeed.
Something like that. So, yeah.
Quite a summer. Yeah. And, it's funny, we didn't mention that a lot of people have made the observation that Damian looks pretty familiar in terms of his facial features and his lack of hair. Interestingly enough, in the Absolute Edition, there are some pieces of commentary from Andy Kubert, and he says, it was never my intention to make Damian look like Grant Morrison. But he did concede that, okay, yeah, he does look like Grant. I just had Grant on my mind, I guess.
I thought it was Patrick Stewart.
He said that it was himself, which I thought was funny. But yeah, I mean, look, I always just like, oh, it's supposed to be Grant Morrison. That's interesting. But apparently that's not the case.
I mean, given how like he put himself into, was it Transmetropolitan?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not within the realm of reason, but for me, like, and I meant to get back to this too. I forgot. Barbara, she's kind of got a Jim Gordon vibe to her. Like she's got like her dad's trench coat, her hair's cut short to be kind of like her father's. She's got a pair of glasses. It's more of a Jim Gordon pair than like a trendy Babs pair. And for me, well, I totally see the Morrison of it all, especially in that one close up before he takes a shower.
Yeah.
I was reminded of The Dark Knight Strikes Again,
Oh,
which again was a very apocalyptic future. But in that story, Batman's trimmed down from how we last saw him in Dark Knight Returns. He's got a shaved head. And
true.
this top page of Damian watching the news with Alfred sitting behind him, it just reminds me of Batman's call to arms at the end of that not as great sequel.
Yes. And feel free to watch an old episode of the Comic Binge where we have a variety of different perspectives about The Dark Knight Strikes Again on display. Wasn't Lauer was on that one with us, wasn't he? He was. Yeah.
That was Lauer.
That was a great
Yeah,
episode.
that was fun. Well, let's wind this down. So, as typically we do here on Nights Never Die, rounded up a few examples of the critical reception of the time. At Comic Book Revolution, the reviewer there, Rock, gave it very, very positive marks. He said, Batman number 666 was an awesome read. Morrison delivers a kick-ass issue that is a wonderful blend of intense action and brooding drama. This is a fantastic one-shot. Normally, I dislike one-shots, but not this one. It's an excellent example of how to pull off a one-shot that doesn't feel like filler. Plus, I'm a sucker for a story that deals with the Book of Revelations. Okay. So positive marks there. IGN again ran 2 reviews, which was customary at this time, with both Dan Phillips and Jesse Shadeen calling it either a must-read or a must-have, respectively. And Phillips pointed out that the forward extrapolation of Damian's character and his internal conflict, aiming to reconcile the worldview and tactics of his father with the harshness and brutality of his upbringing, while Shadeen noted that Morrison's world building for the issue is unparalleled and violent, but he lamented the scheduling woes that we talked about a little bit earlier. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't cite the Batman on Film review of Bill Jet Ramey. And he said the following, quote, even though I personally hope things turn out different for Bruce Wayne and Gotham in the future, I absolutely loved, all caps, this issue. Morrison's writing is top-notch here, and I can't Kubert's artwork. It's simply marvelous. Great writing, spectacular artwork. Batman number 666 gets a run down to your comic book shop now and buy recommendation from yours truly. Hell, I wouldn't mind seeing a miniseries set in this possible future Gotham. How about you? Well, Bill would end up getting his wish, and he has not yet fallen off the train. But yeah, things are going to take a turn, understandably so. But he's still along for the ride at this point.
It's good to know.
As for yeah, I mean, I was shocked at the time, but I was absolutely riveted, and things get very fascinating as time goes on. But we are going to wind this down. Thank you for joining us on this discussion of Batman in Bethlehem, episode 9 of Nights Never Die. Paul, what do you want to inform people about when it comes to the happenings at the Comic Binge?
The happenings of the Comic Binge. Well, next week we haven't figured out a day yet, but it's going to be probably either, I'm assuming, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. We are going to be doing. Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday, right? You're the keeper of the schedule right now.
Wednesday the 12th.
Perfect. Wednesday the 12th. Same binge time, same binge channel. Yep. And we're going to be doing Superman Secret Origins by the great Jeff Johns. There we are.
Nope. No, we're not.
Cap.
I thought we were. That's what I've been reading this whole time.
No, dude, we got Cap the next day. You and me are going to Captain America on Thursday.
Oh, crap. Okay, yeah, I got all mixed up. Okay, you're right.
Not my Captain America. I even sent you visual aids in the text thread.
You did. Okay, my mistake. I got my days are all mixed up. Next week is Captain America, Not My Captain America, Sam Wilson story that by Nick Spencer and David Acuna, right? Daniel Acuna?
Yes.
Daniel, yeah. So we got that definitely next week to promote. Yeah, we're going to be doing that storyline in preparation for the Captain America Brave New World, which I'm getting excited for. I'm binging Falcon Winter Soldier, and I love that series to death. It's so good. So
That's
I'm
one.
getting super excited. Yeah, I'm super excited for Brave New World. This is probably the first MCU film I've been really excited for in quite a while. That's not named Spider-Man, So
You
just
weren't
put that in
excited for
perspective.
Deadpool and Wolverine?
I was excited for it, but like it's not the MCU. That's just, you know what I mean? Like it's different. If that makes any sense. I was excited for it, but this one is more
Before
a
you saw
traditional
the movie,
MCU film.
though, we were told it was X-Men in the MCU. And really, it was just
Yeah,
2 minutes.
listen, like
Are we
listen,
gonna try and get the shield bucket? Are we gonna try and get those?
oh god, there's a shield bucket.
Dude,
You're damn right. I'm gonna.
it's a collapsible shield bucket, so it like folds in.
Oh, I'm in. You say no more. I'm in.
right.
Let's go for it. So next week we
need
got
to see
that.
this
Maybe we'll do. Maybe we'll even do a review if we're feeling frisky afterwards. I don't know. We'll see. And then after that is Secret Origins. My mistake.
Thursday,
great
February 20th on the Comic Binge.
Thank you.
Thursday,
February 20th on
February
the Comic
20th.
Binge, and we are doing Secret Origins by
Superman.
by Captain America.
Secret Origins.
By Superman, Secret Origins. Yeah, same.
Secret
Because
Origins.
there's more than one.
Secret Origin.
Jeff Johns, and Gary Frank, who are doing Geiger, which we will definitely do again some point, sometime soon in the future. Which I'm absolutely loving that series. So they are doing their basically origin of modernizing the I keep saying Captain Superman's origin, which will be for our countdown to Superman. That's what we'll be.
I don't know if I'd say they're modernizing it, but that's a discussion to be had during the show.
We'll talk.
Yeah.
So I'm only a few issues in, but let's just put it that way. I need to get started on the Captain America one. I've already read it, but it's been a long time. But anyway, and after that we have what I'm looking forward to, the Jonathan Hickman retrospective of the whole year of Ultimate Spider-Man. So lots of fun stuff on the binge, and I'm excited to get into it with all you guys. So let's do it.
Sounds good. Javi, where can people find you?
All over the place. YouTube, Flash Up to Speed with Wally West. On your podcatcher of choice, actually just Spotify and Apple, I think. We've got the 007 files, and of course on batmanonfilm.com. No reviews this week or the week before, but I'm reviewing Batman and Robin Year One by Mark Waid and Chris Samney, Catwoman, Batman Gargoyle of Gotham when it comes out. I think that's it for the moment. Quite a few. And then, Batman animation, usually with Bill. And we just did an episode of The Batman talking about their version of Clayface. So,
oh, cool.
Been in a Clayface mood between Gotham Knights and the Batman Resurrections book, and I was going to say the Suicide Squad, but Creature Commandos. Yeah. So,
and he is apparently not dead.
Dovetail.
That's interesting to me.
I guess. Well, I mean, he's Mud.
Maybe it was Hagen, and we'll see Carlo. Maybe. Who knows?
Oh, that could be it too. Or maybe Preston Payne.
Maybe. Oh, hey, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, as for me, you can follow me on the Blue Sky. Primarily is where I'm hanging my hat in terms of social media these days. Check out Discovery Debrief.
I never see you post.
Well, I mean, I post occasionally. I've pulled back a lot, but
fair.
If the mood strikes, then that's probably where you can best interact with me if you want to.
Fair enough.
But check out Discovery Debrief, a Star Trek podcast. We are preparing to record a conversation about Star Trek Section 31. It's going to be kind of a bloodbath, honestly. But,
Brooke was dying when I played her your voice messages about that movie. She was just dying laughing.
It was a little bit rough. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to like it so much, but
I know you did.
Gotta be
I know.
honest. But so we are going to get together on that. In fact, Cicero might be publishing his own commentary from his first watch through. I'm going to see if I can get that going. But we are planning on all getting together to share thoughts, which, if I'm getting the right impressions from our panel, they're not going the way that I thought they would. So should be an interesting discussion. And be sure, of course, to keep it tuned to the Comic Binge for all the great discussions and comics that Paul and I have cooking up for you. Best way to stay in touch, of course, is to like, subscribe, comment, all of the things that help us to further break into the machinations of the YouTube algorithm. Of course, is much appreciated. Support is always appreciated. Next time on Knights Never Die, the advantage is turning to evil, and the dynamic duo will have to use their wits alongside a group of other heroes from across the world as the Black Glove finally asserts itself and makes itself known. Of course, though, until then, you have to remember, Batman and Robin will never die. See you next time.